Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Our show today is A Woman's Prerogative, Part 2, in partnership with E360 TV. A very warm welcome to our loyal viewers and our friends at E360 TV. And hello to all of our friends on our usual social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. Well, this is part 2 of A Woman's Prerogative and part 2 of today's topic, which is managing emotions and expectations, navigating the holiday season. I'm Caroline Heward, and I'm known as the Harley Street Stress Expert, and I'm your host and starring in today's show, and I'm also resident therapist of USA Global TV and Radio. This is a panelist show, and as usual, I'm not alone. I'm joined with a wonderful expert panelist, and she's Mariska Dupree, all the way from, I think it's Australia. I need to write this down. I think she's moved recently and it's Australia. A very warm welcome to Mariska Dupree.
Hello, Caroline. And yes, you are correct. I have moved. We are now in Australia. I was waiting for and she is from New Zealand.
I nearly said that.
Yeah, because we've been doing this for such a long time. And that's where it used to be, right? So
absolutely. Well, Mariska, please do share with our viewers a little bit about what you do and how you help people. And if you have anything new that you're working on right now.
Ooh. So what I do is I help with leadership development, and I partner with leaders to up their game. And we do this by bringing in a little bit more of the humanist element into your leadership. I typically work with specialists moving into leadership. So if you think engineers and doctors, those sort of people that move into leadership, because, well, we learn a whole bunch of things when we go to study, and it's very technical. And then we need to start to work with humans. Not always so easy. So those are my people, being from an engineering background myself, as well as those leaders moving up within their leadership space. Because as we grow in our leadership space, we also discover that there's different ways that we need to lead. So that's what I do. I am also, I've had a bit of a hiatus because of my move. So the move is quite recent. And I am also back on Talking Heads. So that is very, very exciting.
Woo-hoo.
You can definitely go and have a look there. And then other than that, well, new projects. I have a few places where I am interacting with people. So watch this space. We might be bringing some new things into 2024, depending on how the collaborations go. So there is some background work happening, not in a form yet for public consumption, I think. It's still in the development phase, so to speak. So there's a few new things that I am busy with and very excited about. And I'm actually working with somebody that moved from Singapore to the UK. So Caroline, she is now living close to you. I have to say it is a bit of a time difference thing for the two of us also to work together. So late nights for her, early mornings for me is a typical sort of similar process than the one that we have.
Wow, gosh, there's lots going on for you, Mariska. Well, for me, I'm known as the Harley Street Stress Expert, and I help people bust their stress. I do that by using root cause therapy and chakra psychology, identifying the root cause of what creates your repeating patterns of your stress, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, or behavioral, whether you're complaining about a relationship or complaining about a colleague, or whether it's something that's emotional in terms of anger, sadness, or whether it's a physical ache and pain. And it could be a familiar symptom, something that regularly appears for you in terms of the way that you handle and stress manifests inside you for you. And I help break through the patterns that create that stress. And something new for me, well, this weekend on Saturday, I am going to be speaking live on stage at one of my long-term friends and long-term promoter, Des O'Connor, who is launching a new AI an empowerment conference, and it's his launch event and networking and after party. And in between the shows, I was just organizing my PowerPoint presentation, and I'm very excited to be sharing some hot tips to bust your stress live on stage. Okay, well, that's me. So, Mariska, let's get into the topic.
Oh, yes.
So in part one, we explored lots of different things. And I know that when we're together, it's always different in terms of what we share from our own personal experiences and also from the clients that we see and our general demeanor in terms of what we share from our own perspective of our own study, training and expertise. So one of the things that I want to ask, and not just from your personal perspective, but also from your expertise, what are the common emotional challenges during the holiday season? And how can we effectively address them?
So this is a very interesting topic for me because the holiday season in the northern hemisphere and the holiday season in the southern hemisphere looks a bit different. And this might be a little bit because we have summer, whereas in the northern hemisphere, Caroline, you guys have winter. And because we have summer, typically most people during our holiday season would actually take our summer break as well. So there's a tendency to be a longer break, which means you may see family for a little bit longer and also want to, well, potentially get in a decent holiday rest in that space of time. So the emotions that can come up, I have found quite a paradox, especially this time of year, because for most people, there's a frantic rush. I don't know why. I'm not sure about the northern hemisphere, but everybody tries to put in as much as they possibly can in the last couple of weeks of November and the first couple of weeks of December. Almost like it is the end. Nobody will ever be able to finish the work if not done in this part of the year ever again. Very strange. And then you also paradoxically have this slowing down that happens. So one, everybody's calendars are really full, and two, everybody's slowing down. So round about the 15th of December, you'll be very, very lucky if you find people at work. And most of the construction and those sort of businesses have a tendency to also close during that period of time. And they only reopen more or less during January-ish. somewhere later in January. So emotionally, this can be an extremely stressful time for most people. Whether you are working, whether you are planning family holidays, it can be quite a bit of a mess. And something that we need to learn to navigate through. So, Caroline, that's what's happening on the bottom of the planet, typically. What happens around your end?
Well, I was nodding as you were speaking because it's very similar, only it's very chilly here. It's not summer, it's winter. And we've had a bit of snow, we've had ice, we're having our coldest time of year. And it's very similar in terms of responses to the holiday season, especially the back end of the year, Christmas. And very similar to you, we have a slowing down. And I think that it's probably after the first week of December, you can forget it. You can forget trying to organize meetings to make things happen. And people tend to shelve things until after probably mid-January is when you'll get something of consequence done. And so there is, like yourself, a rush. An absolute rush to get everything in, because as soon as you hit December, we call it party season. You know, everybody is having all the Christmas parties, everybody is downing tools and going out for drinks and long lunches. And so, yes, it's very similar here. And it is frustrating. I quite agree with you. We've got the same stuff going on here, that it's almost like you don't have a December. And if you don't get what you need done by the end of the first week, you can just kiss goodbye to it until mid-January. And I tend to find that if I'm doing any development work, especially if I'm doing work for myself, that's the quietest time and the greatest time that I can get lots done, because nobody else is doing stuff. And then I hit the ground running when everybody comes back to work. So that's sort of my piece de resistance on that. From the perspective of the UK and the fact that it's very cold, chilly, this is also a time of lots of gatherings as well, family as well as friends. And one of the challenges I feel that we've got now more currently in terms of our change world times is financial constraints, that some people don't want to go out because things are just much more expensive. And rather than saying, there tends to be a lack of response. So you can send out an invitation, you know, let's meet up. And there is a resistance from some people for two reasons, financial and the cold. And if it's snowing, then nothing works, which we've had. We've had snow, ice. And so in the UK particularly, things just grind to a halt if there's snow and if there's ice. So all the best plans can be completely obliterated if you can't get from one place to another. So that causes a lot of emotional stress. And even though it's a nice time and it's a something to look forward to, it can be very emotionally stressful. So in essence, it's kind of that you have to cope with changing the goalposts, because it might be that you can't go into town and you do something more locally. It might be that people can't get into work, and so there is different types of gatherings, different types of connecting. And the online connecting seems to be very much something that people are still doing, even now that we are in a space where we are able to meet each other. I'm seeing a big trend and a change from seeing people face to face to seeing people online, on Zoom and in Teams. So what are your thoughts about what I've just shared in terms of the fact that people are meeting a bit more online, whereas it was such an oddity 4 years ago?
Caroline, I've also experienced a lot more online flexibility for most people. I think we are seeing that most people, if and where possible, they love to be able to meet in person. And I had this very interesting experience because of the move. So I work with an organization that has a portion of the workforce and the physical buildings in New Zealand, and they also have a portion of the workforce and physical buildings in Australia. So I had different sort of conversations with people in New Zealand as well as people in Australia within that workspace. And funnily enough, and I've only had online conversations with all of these people. But as soon as I told them that I'm moving to Australia, the Australian guys got really excited. I have no idea why, because I would still just see them online. And the New Zealand guys got a little bit sad. And again, I only saw them online. So there is something about, I don't know, proximity potentially, or being in at least the same country, if not the same city, that makes a difference to how we feel, how close we feel to different people, even when we're seeing them online. And I have to say, being from a immigration sort of perspective and having moved quite a bit, as well as having a lot of friends within that space, it is also a way for us to be with family and friends, even though we might be half a planet away. In my case, literally, seeing as the rest of my family is in South Africa. So time zones might be a bit tricky, as we know. But we also have the opportunity to get together in this way, which, I mean, it isn't the in-person thing. But then again, you know what? I love the fact that I can still have a drink of coffee or whatever other beverage it is that you prefer, or a bit of a snack, and I don't need to clean up my whole house for it. So yeah, that's just me.
Oh, that's so funny, because that made me think when I used to have dinner parties, and I would literally leave all the washing up, and I would go to bed, and then I would get up and do the washing up, in the middle of the night. And it was when I was married, and I just said, "Oh, leave it, let's just enjoy the time, with our friends." And I would get up and I would sort it all out, and then the next morning, my then husband would say, "Oh, the washing up's all been done." I says, "Oh, the fairies must have been at it," because I wanted to enjoy the night and not be thinking about the domesticity of the cleaning up, if you know what I mean. So that reminded me about my fairy story. I'd always got fairies looking after the washing up and cleaning up. So, Mariska, societal pressures on the gift giving and making it a perfect family Christmas, a perfect holiday experience. And there certainly is a lot of that expectation, from social media, from films, dramas, from documentaries, that we have to perform. And, in social media, there is lots of pictures when people do have happy family gatherings to be showing up as the perfect family, never more so now than the fact that social media is very much a part of people's everyday lives. And some people are having fun. And so for some families, it's not an easy time. It's a difficult time. It's a challenging time in terms of some families don't get on. Some families find it difficult to come together because they press each other's buttons. So what's your thoughts in terms of, from your expertise and from your knowledge, about the pressures of creating that perfect Christmas, and to look at the person's emotional well-being in trying to be in that perfect Christmas experience?
Well, first off, perfect does not exist. Just a secret for anybody that did think that it does exist, it doesn't. So whatever perfect you have in your mind, be sure that potentially, as Caroline mentioned a little bit earlier, all best laid plans will most probably not work out. Stuff will happen and we will need to adjust. So I think for me, the way that I think about holiday plans is really about what's the feeling I want to create within this space. It doesn't really matter whether the activities work out or not. It's more about how do we feel when we spend time together, and making sure that we are able to bring more of that of ourselves, I think for me is a helpful way to think about it. So how do I want to show up and what is it that I would like to do? And I've had a very interesting conversation with one of my clients the other day around going back home and having experiences with family. And Caroline, your comment around we push each other's buttons is when we get into those familiar spaces where we grew up in, we have a tendency to go back into that mindset as well. Even though we might have grown and changed in the meantime, we have a tendency to step back into those roles. And the thing is, if we are not conscious about the fact that that's what we're doing, we will step back into it and we will have buttons pushed and we will have a miserable time in the process. If we are conscious about it, we can start to change it and we can start to choose to do it differently. It's not always easy. I get that. And it is still a lot better when we realize that we have a choice. And then we can start to create the type of gathering that we really want, or say no to the ones where we see that they won't serve us in any way, shape, or form. So that to me is really something to take into consideration, especially during this time period. I don't know about you, Caroline. I know that you have, well, working with people that's very stressed. I'm sure that they have loads that they share, especially during this time period.
Well, I thank you, Mariska, for your incredibly transparent and wonderful share. It really, I was nodding again, feeling exactly the same. And my Christmas, I usually spend with family, and it's very much a kitchen duty thing. It's very much, sort of the cooking and the cleaning up and the, making sure everybody else is okay. That fulfills me in some way, that I'm able to contribute to the family, and I always feel very satisfied, no matter how quickly they eat the food, that they've actually enjoyed it after slaving for many hours. One of the things that is important is, like you said, that what is it that you want from the occasion? What is it that you want to experience? And it's so easy to land up in those difficult conversations and those difficult experiences with family, particularly. And so one of my tips is to focus on what works for you. My thing is to focus on the kitchen, making sure their tummies are well cared for and making sure that everything is tasty and it's hot. And also in that space of looking after the others, I find that in focusing on everybody else and making sure that they're okay, it comes back to me that I land up being looked after too. And so my mum always has a box of chocolates, usually roses. And so when we do have some quiet time after the busyness of lunch, there's a box of roses, and she says, go on, there's a box in there. And she always has in the drawer some chocolate buttons. So I'm a bit of a chocolate fiend. And so my mum really takes care of me with the chocolate. And it's always there, no matter how busy she's been, it's always there. And it's my treat. And it's something that I really look forward to, almost like an expectation. And at the same time, it's part of our downtime to enjoy the occasion of all of the hustle and bustle of getting everything ready, and then having the calm after the fact that we've got everything cooked and prepared for the family. The other thing that I would also suggest is to make sure that you focus on the positive things that you want to share about your day, your week, your life, and look for the positive things from others in your family or who you're sharing your time with, because we all have challenges, and it's very easy to focus on what's not working, which can bring the energy and the frequency down of the entire experience. So to focus on what's been good, what are the milestones that you've achieved that are wonderful that you want to share with your family and your friends as you're celebrating. And in that space, to be, if somebody is in a state of stress and sharing stressful things, I would normally be in a place of listening and being present with them so that they feel heard and listened to, so it calms down their experience that they're feeling stressed, so that they feel relaxed and they become more present to enjoy the experience. So, Mariska, what are your thoughts in terms of what I've shared? I've actually shared a mindfulness thing that, that sort of being present, to be there for the other person, because we don't know what's going on in their lives. Do you have any tips that you could share with our audience on the show tonight in terms of managing the stressors that can come up? I've mentioned a couple of mindfulness techniques. What are your things that you would like to share with our audience tonight?
Caroline, I think it is very important for us to also understand how we are regulating ourselves. And especially in a time where we step into a space, understanding what it is that we want to create is one part of it. Creating it is a little bit of a different piece of that same puzzle. And understanding what it is, as you said, what we need personally to help us show up as our best selves. And for me, I might not spend as much time in the kitchen. I don't mind helping out in the kitchen. So in our family, what we normally do is, when I was still back in SA, we would each bring a dish. So we would decide on a theme, whatever the theme is for that year, and then we will each bring something for one course of our meal. So somebody would get dessert, somebody would get the main course, and somebody would get the starters, for instance. So it spreads the load of the food making process, and it also helps us to cut down in dishes because, well, you get to return your own dirty dishes to your own house where you only wash those, which is very helpful for the person wherever it is hosted. And being able to make sure that personally we regulate ourselves. So we co-regulate as humans. For those with pets, you might notice that when you are sad or stressed or in a space where you need some attention, typically the dog or cat has a tendency to come and want to sit on your lap or just lay their head on your lap or be close to you in some shape or form. So that's them trying to co-regulate with you. And we also do that with other human beings. And in saying this, all of us don't necessarily co-regulate the same way. So for me personally, I can co-regulate with one person at a time, not a problem if there's a big group. Preferably, I would like to have less people around me. So I might go for a walk in nature or go and pet the cat or dog that's close by. So that helps me with regulating myself. It is also helpful to know when we go into a stress space. So knowing ourselves well enough to know, okay, this is starting to stress me out, so I can step away from it. And also in the planning piece of things, setting it up in a way that I know if I am going to feel stressed, this is what I will do. So if I have it planned out beforehand, it makes it so much easier to actually activate said plan in the moment versus going into it and not having a emergency strategy, and then having to come up with one, because then I'm already overloaded and the likelihood is it might just explode in my face, which is not what we're looking for. So those are typically things that I also take into consideration when I go into spaces where I may not have as much control of what is happening within that space. Especially when stepping into, for instance, other families. So I know my own, I know what's going to happen. I know which triggers to look out for, but in another family, I might not know what's going to happen or what sort of triggers will be pushed. So there I normally have a bit of a backup emergency, in case of emergencies plan, to bring with me so that I can make sure that I can regulate myself and then be in a space where I can potentially co-regulate with others. And breathing is also a good way to go.
Oh, I love that. I love this idea of each bringing a dish. That sounds like such a godsend. That really does. I'm doing the starter. I do a homemade prawn cocktail for my family, which they all adore. It's become the Caroline speciality. The homemade, sort of all singing, all dancing, and then I do the goose from scratch, homemade stuffing, and it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot to do, and at the same time, I do enjoy it. But I'm exhausted at the end of it. So I do like this idea of this. Everybody brings a dish. That's something that it probably wouldn't work in our family because my brothers don't sort of they just kind of participate in the eating and the celebrating rather than the bringing of dishes. But that brings me on to, and you very neatly brought me into the segue of boundaries and making sure that you're comfortable in what you're saying you'll do versus what other people are expecting you to do, and feeling comfortable to say no. I feel that, sort of certainly in the UK, particularly, our Britishness is reluctant to say no. I can't do that. And I don't know how it is for the New Zealanders and the Australians, as now you've got a bit of both. It's sometimes so overwhelming to keep saying yes and then finding that you're burnt out. So we're almost at the end of our show, believe it or not. So if you can share some quick thoughts and some tips in terms of what your thoughts are. One of mine to share is to be comfortable, to be uncomfortable and saying no when it doesn't work. And it might sound very simple, but for our British population, our British culture, just to consider saying the words no would be, heaven forbid. But, sort of my invitation is to feel comfortable if you're out of your depth, to step into a state of a boundary and say, I'm sorry, I'm not able to do that. And I can do this and this. What are your thoughts and what would you like to share in terms of boundaries and being able to say no?
Caroline, the way I think about saying no is that if I say yes to everything, I'm literally actually also saying no to a lot of things, because instead of actively choosing the things that I'm saying yes to, I'm just piling them on my plate. Now, going with the whole holiday and eating way too much theme, if we have a set plate and we keep piling food on, at some point, stuff will start falling off of it. A plate can only hold that much. And that's the same for us. We can only do so much. We have the same amount of time. We have different capabilities. So if I'm going to say yes to everything, one, I'm overloading my plate. And two, there might be somebody else that can do the thing a lot better than I can in a lot shorter time. And I am taking that away from them by agreeing to do it. So the way I think about it is I want to make sure that I choose the things that I'm really good at and enable and give the opportunity to others that can do the other things. So it really becomes a discussion so that we can see how to use each other's strengths as best we can. And when we put stuff on the table for others to pick up, we might just be surprised at what they come up with. So, Caroline, that might be an uncomfortable comfort to step into for inviting your brothers to bring something to dinner. They might just surprise you.
Well, it's worth a shot. I might be tempted to ask one of my brothers, who is a cook, to see what he thinks about doing something for Christmas lunch. But that's definitely a thought. Well, Mariska, we are at the end of our show. So before we leave, and it's been such a joy, it really has, to share this show with you and to share our tips of how we would handle the challenges of our holiday times. And I feel like, we could do, this is a part 2 of this topic, we could do a part 3 and 4 at this rate. So please do share with our viewers, Mariska, how they can reach you and what the best way of contacting you is.
So if you are a leader stepping into leadership from a speciality such as engineering or potentially being a physician, or you are already a leader and you want to step up within your leadership space, you can reach me via my email, which is mariska@journey2discover.com. Or alternatively, you can also reach me on LinkedIn and you can send me a direct message and we can start our conversation.
Thank you, Mariska. And for me, you can reach me on nomorestress@live.co.uk or call me if you're international using the code +44. If you're local in the UK, 07523 120 189. I'm also very responsive on the social media platforms, Facebook and LinkedIn. Do send me a message and I will respond as soon as I can. And I look forward to helping you bust your stress. It's been a really riveting show. I've really enjoyed the sharing and the interesting exchanges that we have shared on tonight's show about managing emotions and expectations, navigating the holiday season. You've been watching A Woman's Prerogative Part 2 of this show, and I look forward to seeing you next week for Part 1, A Woman's Prerogative, which is at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and for A Woman's Prerogative Part 2, 4 p.m. Eastern Time and 9 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Before we go, just to remind you of our VIP exclusive community, become an exclusive VIP community member and have first access to our newest videos and photographs and insights of the British royal family. It's live streamed on USA Global TV and Radio and YouTube. And now I look forward to seeing you next week at the same time for A Woman's Prerogative Part 1 and A Woman's Prerogative Part 2. Thank you very much for watching, whether you're on the live or the replay. And thank you very much for joining us for A Woman's Prerogative. Bye-bye for now, and over to our wonderful sponsors.
5 Little Known Secrets for Dementia Caregivers with Tracy Cram-Perkins.
Hi there, I am Tracy Cram-Perkins, the host of the Dementia Home Care Show here on USA Global TV and Radio. I am also the author of the book of the same name. And you'll see this QR code. This is for an extended version of the same talk. So if you want to see the full hour-long version, feel free to scan the code and go to that website. Stick with me. We'll talk about 5 little known secrets to make it a little easier to do dementia caregiving. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is a healthy aged brain, age 55 and above. The one you're seeing on the right is an Alzheimer's disease brain. It is in moderate disease. It is shrinking. It has holes in it. The memories that were in those holes no longer exist. When you're learning something, let's say in kindergarten, you learn how to tie your shoelace. Well, then by the time you're in 2nd grade, your brain remembers that information from tying the shoelace and applies it so you can learn more quickly how to tie more complex knots. So the brain is hardwired to do this for us, so it helps us learn faster so it doesn't take us long to acquire knowledge. The brain is looking for the information and they pick the closest to wherever that hole is. Let's look at some tips that we can use to help do that.
These are 5 simple tools you can use as a dementia caregiver to help your loved one. The whiteboard is a useful tool in recording the day's activities and the answers to repetitive questions. The calendar clock is a very useful tool to orient your loved one on the day, the date, and the time, and remind them of upcoming appointments. The communication cards are a great tool to bridge the gap when they can no longer tell you what's wrong. And then there's the pill minder for when your loved one is still able to take pills but needs prompting. The final tool I want to share with you is the memory book. It tells your loved one's story. It's a great tool for distraction, redirection, also as a conversation starter, and telling you where they are in their story so you know how to answer their questions.
Music is probably the most powerful tool in your toolbox after laughter. Music is a way to maintain connection. It sticks with your brain longer than any other thing, including reading. When you're having an issue with somebody, you can play their favorite music if you move them to another room, something that makes them happy, or you can start singing songs together from their childhood. These are some of my favorite books for caregivers. My show airs on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, and you can view past episodes on YouTube. Thank you, everyone.
This program has been brought to you in part by Tracy Cram-Perkins. Connect with her and order her book at tracycramperkins.com. For more information about Alzheimer's disease, support resources, and how you can help, contact the Alzheimer's Association at 1-800-272-3900 or visit their website at www.alz.org. They offer 24/7 helpline support and a wealth of information to assist you and your loved ones.